Today we have a 2014 Chevrolet Sonic with the 1.8 liter ECOTEC engine, and we are going to be replacing the valve cover. Welcome back to the Moose Mobile Auto Repair channel. And so, as per the customer's request on this vehicle, they wanted me to replace the valve cover and the gasket, along with the I believe that that there's a pipe that goes into the back. So this particular one that the customer provided is a metal type of valve cover, but there is the plastic stuff in the inside here though. But everything else is all metal. I think it's aluminum, but I'm not 100% sure. So they wanted to upgrade the current one with this one here. And we also have the valve cover gasket to replace at the same time. So before we start, you want to make sure that you are working on a cold engine, not on a hot engine. So make sure it has cooled down if it's hot. So we have 11 E10 Torx bolts all across here, and I believe this is a T40 for the ignition coils. So I already removed the plastic piece cover, the ECOTEC piece that goes on top here. So this you just need to pull it off, and then it comes out. So before we remove these bolts out, we want to disconnect the ignition coil connector. The orange plastic locking tab, you can either use a flathead screwdriver or a pick, and carefully to push out on that and push down on the connector. You should be able to slide this out, and these you just need to lift these up. You should be able to lift this up. If I believe there's a tab inside here, so you need to push it. This one is out. I just need to push this one out now. You just gotta be careful. You just need to lift up and push up and get this out of the way. And same deal with the ones in the back, the harness in the back here. You just need to give yourself some clearance. If you want, you can take off the black plastic piece here to give some slack on the harness to get it out of the way. This you can push out to give you some slack if you need to. A little bit of room. Just need to remove the wiring out of the way. It's probably best if you want to disconnect the mass airflow sensor, but I don't really see that being in the way here. So what I'm gonna do is disconnect the actuator here, the exhaust actuator. So this, if you're having a hard time disconnecting it, you can just to use a thin flathead to get underneath here to push up on the tab, so we can get the harness just out of the way a little bit here, so to make life a little bit easier. So now that harness is out of the way, so we won't have to fight the harness, and we need to put the new valve cover back in. So now you can remove the T40 torque bolts. You gotta be very careful when you remove the ignition coil assembly. You may need to wiggle it. Sometimes these are common for braking, so you need to be careful here. This one came out fairly easy as it has been serviced in the past. I believe the customer, sometimes they work on their own vehicles, so they put some dielectric grease, so that's good. Makes everything easy. So we are going to put that aside. Now we have access to all of the bolts here. We need to disconnect the PCV pipe that's in the back. So I'm going to use a pick to remove the hose here. I believe the customer got a replacement one for this one, so we are probably going to replace that. It fell down somewhere, but we'll be able to catch that later. We're going to remove this pipe out of the way. So we can take a tiny magnet down here. The clip, it fell down where the intake is. So we're able to catch it from here. We'll put that aside. What's next? We're gonna remove the bolts now. So I'm trying to give you guys a closer view. So we're just gonna remove all of the E10 bolts. I believe there are a total of 11 of them. So just make sure you take note on where each one goes. I think that there are some short ones and some long ones. So it doesn't really matter on where you start. So we're gonna remove all of them. These ones, they lock into the valve cover. The aftermarket ones, I don't think they lock into the valve cover. Got all of them loose now, so we're going to make sure they're all loose. You may need to wiggle the valve cover in order to get it off. We need to wiggle the valve cover in order to get it all off. Once you get it all off, it should be able to come out just like that. So for some strange reason, I don't see any sealant on where the cams meet. I believe because of this area here. This is ran off the timing belt, so I don't know if you'll be needing any sealant. I'll be having a look at service information just to make sure. For now, we're just going to do a quick wipe here, clean all of the surfaces. So we're gonna wipe everything down, and then we are going to wash it up with brake cleaner a tad bit and just go from there. So I'm just using a shop rag just to clean the area. You gotta make sure that the surfaces are clean and dry before you install the new uh, valve cover. So we're just going to spray this down with brake cleaner a tiny bit. You can spray directly if you want. It's not a big deal if you get a little bit of brake cleaner here and there. It's okay. You can spray directly on the shop rag if you're very concerned. Sometimes I just spray directly. That's fine too. It's not a big deal. Just continue cleaning the surfaces now. You may need to use like a uh, a razor blade just to get off just to clean the dirt off of here that you're not able to get off with a regular shop rag or shop towel. On this particular design engine, I don't see any sealant uh, from the factory, so you may not need to put any sealant here. Be careful to not get any of the shop towel stuff inside the engine. Now, if you want, you can just use a razor blade to carefully scrape the residue off of the surface here. It's only a tiny amount, so there's not much here. Or you can use something like this. This is a Scotch Brite paper. It's safe to use for aluminum surfaces. I like to use this all the time. So sometimes you can just clean all across to get rid of all the dirt. If you want, you can take the dipstick tube out of here. If it's getting in the way. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but as long as you have everything all cleaned up, then you should be okay. Always make sure that you clean the surfaces up well and properly, otherwise, it's going to leak if you don't clean up the surfaces properly. So make sure you take your time and do a proper job. And then you don't have to worry about it uh, coming back. I typically don't use Scotch Brite for valve covers. Usually I wipe it down. Sometimes use the razor blade, and that's good. There really isn't anything much to clean. So just very slight debris or dirt. I'm just I'm working my way through. I want to do the same in the back. just be careful when they to not get any of the dirt inside here. So once you're done, you can continue using brake cleaner to clean the rest of the way. Not a big deal to get brake cleaner here and there. It's just going to evaporate. It's not going to damage anything. So make sure you get the surfaces all clean and dry before you install the new valve cover and or gasket. We're going to do one last wipe before we do the install. So I wiped it several times off camera already. So just doing a demonstration here. I did install the new gasket off camera here. So hopefully this is going to work because this is aftermarket. So I was gonna say that you will need to add a little bead of sealant here and over here, and where the camshaft meets. Although I didn't see any that was applied from the factory, it may have been a tiny amount, but we're going to apply some now. We're going to apply a tiny amount here on the corners. You should have removed the old sealant if there's any. Want to make sure you use a razor blade just to go inside the corners there to make sure that the old gasket, if there's any, then just scrape the old one off. There's barely anything there, but anyhow, I'm just going to put a tiny amount of sealant over here and over here. And that's it. You don't need to put too much. Just a small dab, and you're good. I'm using the right stuff gasket, the 1 minute gasket stuff by Permatex. So we are going to start installing the valve cover now. Just make sure that when you install the valve cover that you do not roll over the seal. If you roll over the seal, then it's going to leak. Make sure when you apply the valve cover that everything is straight and that the gasket is not twisted. So I just made sure I pressed in with my fingers. I went all across and all around to make sure that everything is in properly. So make sure everything is seated in. You have to do this fairly quickly so that the silicone does not dry up. You can install the bolts now. These bolts do not have the bushings pre-installed. You have to manually insert the bolts into each one. It's not like the factory valve cover. They have the sleeves or the bushings that hold the bolts in place, so you don't need to manually uh, put them in. I'm just going to put all of the bolts in. We are going to start them by hand. I'm just going to run these through by hand only, using a 9 mil socket here, 12 point. For some reason this one doesn't fit over the head. This is why I don't like aftermarket stuff. Always gives me trouble and problems. So can always be a nuisance sometimes. This one here, I'm trying to, it's a start, but not going in for some reason. You know, hopefully it does not leak. I don't feel too confident about this. So once I've started everything, you can work in a crisscross fashion to tighten them down. Torque spec is 71 inch-pounds. Sometimes I like to run my way through with a flashlight to make sure that the valve cover is in properly and that I didn't roll the seal over, because sometimes you can roll the seal over and then it will start to leak oil. I'm going to tighten them down uniformly in a crisscross fashion. This one is not the same size for some reason, this one here, so I'm probably going to use a different socket, a 9 mil socket that I was using, because this is aftermarket crap that we are working with. You guys may notice on how carefully I'm working here, because I do not want to break anything. I'm working very, very slowly and carefully. going to torque them after I have got them in. I'm going to torque them to 71 inch-pounds. So we're going to torque this baby to 71 inch-pounds in a crisscross fashion. Still need to tighten them up a tiny bit. Sometimes you may need to tighten them up in several passes or stages. There's one or two bolts I don't feel confident about, so uh, I stopped using the torque wrench. I feel there is something that's going to happen, so I stop. Again, I don't trust aftermarket parts. I really don't recommend this stuff. I know the GM stuff is plastic, but really, I highly recommend just get the GM stuff and just use that to save yourself any hassles. These plastic stuff will probably go for some time before you will need to do them again. So that's in a very long time. So I'm just going to go through each bolt now, just make sure they are snug. And I feel like that the bolt is going to break, so I'm not going to torque it any further. So I don't know if this stuff is gonna work or not, so we have to see. This kind of stuff, aftermarket stuff that you're very uncertain of, especially when it's going on the engine. Uh, I get a lot of anxiety, and so this stuff because the issue is when a customer provides you with their own part, things can go south very badly and end very badly too. So you really need to be careful when you're dealing with the aftermarket garbage. So anyhow, I'm just going to finish off on what I'm doing here, and I'm just going to double check and triple check my work just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. I'm going to see if there's a oil cap that came with this. valve cover. So it's very. I'm not confident. I'm not confident enough to put my name on this. It's just this is not the kind of thing that I like to do. I'd rather just use the genuine GM stuff, and that's it, and just call it a day. The last thing I want is that there's a comeback, or there's problems, and so it may seem and look cool and stuff, but still I'm not confident about this stuff. So anyhow, we're just going to install this. Now I just found out that my microphone died, so I have to see on where I was on where the microphone stopped. Then I'll probably have to do a voiceover for those clips. So right now I put some dielectric grease on the coils. So and some of the dielectric grease on the T40 Torx bolts. So now we are going to tighten that down. And I was saying earlier that the PCV hose, the customer supplied a different one. I don't know if that's a genuine GM part, or if it's a crappy aftermarket one. The aftermarket one looks like it's cheaper than the GM one. So anyhow, I don't know on where it cut off, but I'm probably have to do a voiceover for that because the microphone died once again. So now I just put the microphone on charge at the moment, so I don't have the mic on right now. So I'm just waiting for the microphone to charge up. So for now, I'm just going to tighten up the bolts, the two T40 bolts. I was just trying to say that I'm not very comfortable using unsuspecting aftermarket parts, because I always have ran into those problems with aftermarket parts that I'm not sure about. I only use a reputable brand that I know that's good. Otherwise, I just use the original manufacturer stuff. Because the last thing you want to know is that you have to do the job twice, and that's not something that I like doing. I don't think anybody likes to do a job twice. So we're going to tighten this up. I'm not sure on what the torque specs are, but I will put them on the screen. The little battery light is flashing again. Low battery for the Milwaukee light. I'm going to change the battery. So now that's in. When you get the ignition coil connector inside. Make sure everything clicks in. And you put the trim clip here that we took out earlier. I don't know if this ECOTEC cover goes on or not. It probably does. I'm going to keep that off for now. I want to start the engine up, just verify if there's any leaks, and just go from there, and we will put everything back. So now I'm going to start the engine, going to run it just to make sure there's no oil leaks. So just verify that there are no more leaks or no leaks, and then you should be all good to go. And again, you can use a mirror in the back to check make sure that you did not roll over the seal, because it's possible that if you roll over the seal or gasket, then it will leak oil. Just make sure everything looks okay. Go for a road test and come back and double check your work. While this is running, I'm just going to install this. All the way, customer had electrical tape here some time ago because they wouldn't clip in all the way. But that's the best that I can do. I'm just going to give it a quick clean, just to clean the residue here and some oil, and then that's it. One last tip I would like to give is that usually I like to use a mirror just to have a look to make sure that I didn't roll the seal over, and verify that there are no oil leaks that is coming from the valve cover gasket, because there are sometimes you are not able to see without using a mirror properly, so you want to be careful. And I just go all across here to make sure that everything looks okay. Now, typically, if you roll the seal over, it will usually happen at the corners. So you need to watch out for that. So I just go all across and make sure everything is dry, it looks okay, and then you should be all good to go. So now I ran the vehicle for some time and double checked for leaks. I'm going to go for a road test and double check again just to be sure, and then I'm going to ship it out. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to give it a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night and take care.